Welcome to this week's episode of Successful AF, the podcast for people who've climbed all the ladders, ticked all the boxes, and still feel like success is a million miles away. I'm Jess West, your host, leadership and burnout coach for high-achieving women. I help you redefine success without sacrificing your well-being. Today, I am thrilled to be joined by Clara Ho, a woman whose journey will make you question everything you've been told about success. Clara grew up crossing international borders with her passport every day just to get to school, a 6-hour round trip on the worst days. She was taught that success meant achieving the Singapore dream: cash, credit card, condo, country club, and car, the 5 C's that defined an entire generation. But Clara's story is about what happens when you start questioning those narrow definitions. From selling Louis Vuitton bags while studying pre-law, to becoming head of operations in Bangkok, to taking a year out teaching Cambodia and backpack through Central America alone, something almost unheard of for Asian women of her generation. Clara has consistently chosen the harder and more authentic path. Now a strategy consultant at Roland Berger in Dubai, Clara has completely redefined what success means. Not the material markers she was raised to pursue, but something far more profound: breaking through self-imposed limitations whilst maintaining her integrity, and doing it all without asking for anyone's permission. What I love about Clara's perspective is her unflinching honesty about toxic conditioning, especially the expectations placed on women. She talks about being taught to suppress every feeling in her body, to keep going when exhausted, and how the women in her life reinforced the very systems that limited her. But she also shares how she unlearned all of that, one uncomfortable conversation and solo trip at a time. This conversation touches on everything from gender roles and cultural expectations to why your body is wiser than your brain, why you should face your fear gremlins daily, and why success is actually inevitable if you're willing to do the hard things. Let's get into today's episode. And Clara, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. Really happy to be here.
Very excited about this. Very, very excited. Tell us your story.
So I grew up in Malaysia, so I'm Malaysian, and my parents come from Sarawak, which is the Borneo side of things. If we know Malaysia split into 2. Mom and dad, older brother, myself, so we're 4. I had grandma and grandpa around growing up. Growing up, I did this really funny thing where I took a school bus to Singapore. So I crossed the border with my passport every day for 10 days. So if you know the comedian Ronnie Cheng, do you know Ronnie Cheng?
No.
Okay. Well, this is a phenomenon. So border of Malaysia is like 1 kilometer away from Singapore. So kids in my generation, we didn't have international school. We had like 3 state schools. It wasn't a lot of choice. But parents with this, a little bit more kind of ambition, they wanted their kids to have something better. They literally sent us across the border every day with our passports in yellow school buses. There were like hundreds of us doing this every day. And I went to a country and then back to my country every day when I was growing up. So that was pretty crazy.
Wow.
You guys crossed London, but I crossed countries growing up.
That's a lot cooler.
So growing up in the border of Malaysia and studying in Singapore and coming home, that was kind of like my earliest social, cultural references. And what I saw really deeply impacted me. I understood what it was to be a woman. I understood what jobs were, understood what behavior was like, all from my little Malaysian Singapore bubble. So that was me growing up. Then after high school, I went to college. So I did something like pre-law in Kuala Lumpur. And because I was so broke, I also had a part-time job in Louis Vuitton. I don't know how I got there, but like this church friend, this church friend connected me, and before I knew it, I was like half in college and half like selling luxury bags, like on the on the sales floor. So that was me in college in Kuala Lumpur, big city, and then after that, I went over to the UK. where I was in Wales, and this was kind of my foray into the big international world. I guess the UK, which you grew up in, but was brand new for me. I saw dogs on the street, and then, coming from a Muslim country, I was like, what? Dogs in trains and buses? Like, this is crazy. So that was all new. I got to use my full vocabulary. I spoke really good English, but for some reason felt the need to fit my language into Manglish, which is like Malaysian English or like Singlish. I don't know if you've heard of it, Singapore English. And for once I could speak, and it was really, and I was funny in the UK. I wasn't I wasn't funny in Malaysia or Singapore. So I was like, it was kind of a step towards some form of actualization, self-actualization when I was in the UK. I kind of saw myself more. I was seen more. I felt more appreciated in the UK. And so I did law school then, and that was a huge part of me discovering who I was, and appreciating more of who I was. Then towards the end of law school, I decided I don't think doing law is the thing for me. And I really wanted to be a consultant. For some reason, being a consultant really stood out. I failed all my consulting interviews. Like, they kind of only did roadshows in Oxford, Cambridge, and LSE, and I graduated from none of those schools. So got in, but didn't make it through any of the interviews. Then got my first job was in education, was in international student recruitment. So I did that. And by the tender age of 26 or 27, found myself in quite a senior role in this company called Kaplan. And they said, hey, we need a head of operations in Bangkok. Do you want to go? And I'm like, Bangkok? Yes, sign me in. So I moved from the UK to Bangkok. And then after like 6 years of being in the education industry, that itch of being a consultant was really just scratching at me. And I was like, okay, I need to do this, but like how, and I had this really secure job, and I had an apartment, I had my friends, and I'm just like, okay, then how do I leap from this to that? So took a year out, did a bit of self-studying, learned finance and accounting online on Coursera, did mentoring for like 6 months, and then came back to Kuala Lumpur. And really the first job that I saw on Deloitte was in strategy. And that was kind of in the area that I wanted to go in. And I was just like, okay, let me go for it. I did that. The person who interviewed me in Deloitte really liked the fact that I kind of was slightly unconventional and took a roundabout way of getting there, and not your typical MBA kind of B school, business school graduate. And yeah, so that was 2019. And since then, I have moved from Deloitte. I did a bit of a step up to a strategy firm. So now in Roland Berger in this German strategy consulting firm, and recently moved from the Singapore office to the Dubai office. So got married in between last year. Husband kind of got a job in Doha, moved to Doha briefly, and then moved to Dubai after. But yeah, and here I am. So week 1 of my new job done. And that's kind of my journey the past 3.5 decades to get here.
Thank you so much. I have so many questions. Like, just the notion of like having to take a passport to school for me, and just as a child not losing that is huge. And also, I assume because you said you were bused, like there were other kids who were maybe from where you lived. So were all your friends therefore in Singapore, or were they sort of going across the border with you, and therefore you were able to hang out with them at the weekends without again having to cross a border?
We have friends from both sides of the causeway. We call it the causeway. So we had our Singaporean friends that we hung out with from Monday to Friday. And then we had our Malaysian friends that we spent our weekends with. I was really active in church as well, so I had my church friends as well. So you hung out with Malaysians on the weekends, and then with both your classmates from both nationalities from Mondays to Fridays. And there was such a critical mass of this that and we were kind of all studying along the border. So we didn't really go to school in Singapore, like in the middle of Singapore. We kind of went to the border schools. So the border schools had a lot of Malaysians. So there were just so many of us that we just had friends. But it really speaks to Asian parents and how much they prioritize education above everything else, above fun, above sleep, above rest. That was their top, like they need to go to good school. And that was how that manifested. But I think that spoke a lot to our parents' values and what they valued and what they didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huge. And I guess like for them, sending you to Singapore would have been absolutely, we're giving our children the best start in life we possibly can.
I did the same exams as you did, Jess. So I did the GCSEs, I did the O levels.
Wow.
Because a feature of the Singapore system was that they were fully following the British. So I did I did the same exams as you did. That was the draw of studying in Singapore, that you did internationally recognized exams. And in Malaysia, you didn't. You did state exams. Like you did, if I told you the names, you wouldn't even recognize them, the STPM and all that. So that was kind of why we were sent so far away to study.
And what was how long did it take to get there every day?
Without traffic, I'd say 45 minutes. With traffic, 2 to 3 hours.
Wow.
Yes, girl. Yes. We were all very sleep deprived.
Yeah. So you're basically doing a 6-hour round trip to go to school.
In the worst of days. They weren't always like this, but in the worst of days, yes. So it now that I look back, that was crazy. Like I don't know if I'd do that again, but that was my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess as a kid as well, you don't know any different because your parents tell you to do something and you're like, okay, well, everyone else seems to be doing it too. So that's what I'm doing. Yeah. Really interesting.
But a big thing, Jess, is that we were all so tired. Like if you just think about it, just think about going back to, back and forth 4 to 6 hours and to an extremely grueling system and being so tired by the end of that. And then on top of that, doing your piano lessons and your this lessons and your dance lessons on the weekend and then starting all over again. I think if I gave it the most generous lens, it was in pursuit of better opportunities and better education. In the most pessimistic lens, it taught me to suppress every feeling in my body. That stress and fatigue and the feeling that I've had enough was not an option. It was not an option. And this was the same for all of us. It wasn't just me. We were all, part of our brains were kind of shut down a little bit. And just, if you feel fatigue, keep going. If you're tired, keep going. And that theme has carried on up until my 30s, my 20s, where I thought a break was only justified when I had like a high fever, or a break was only justified when I was physically out of it. Whereas you're supposed to be taking a break 2 weeks before that, or pumping the brakes like a month before that. But I was taught to go the extreme lengths or the extreme limits in pursuit of what I wanted. Again, so positive, but so negative at the same time, So that was my most formative years.
How did you unlearn the suppression of self? Because some people never unlearn that. Was there a moment when you were like, okay, this can't carry on, or was it just a sort of gradual self-education?
I'm still learning. I don't think I fully picked it up, but I think when I started being in relationships, and then I started being with people not from my background, not from my system, seeing how they dealt with stress and how they dealt with fatigue, and them looking at me thinking, is this girl crazy? And having that reflected back to me, just kind
Yeah.
of like, wait, perhaps this is not the right way of doing things. Where you take one sick leave every 3 years, like that's just a bit crazy. Like, doesn't make sense. But so you kind of have yourself reflected back to you over the years, and people just saying, like, what's stopping you from taking a break? And you're like, oh, because, I can still go on. I can still go on.
Mm.
But then people are like telling you, actually, no. Like, when you think you're coping, you're not. These balls are dropping, and you can't see them because you're justifying them away, but they are. You're not stronger, you're not Superman, you don't have special pills like helping you cope better. You just think that you can go further, but you might not actually be doing it. So it was kind of a slow process of people reflecting my behavior back to me, and me realizing, actually, maybe I'm not coping. I think I am, but I'm not. And like, to what levels of coping? Are you fully there? Are you just a zombie? Where your energy's not there, your heart's not there, your mind's not there. But hey, I've showered and I've pressed my clothes and I'm at work. So there are different levels of functioning. And when I thought I was still functioning, I was barely functioning. And I think that was a learning, and that was a realization for me.
Huge. Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
Welcome.
I want to touch on the year out you had, because you really quickly brushed over that. Oh, yeah, no, I taught myself some stuff. I think it's a little bit more than that, because when we spoke, you told me what you did. So let's dig into that a little bit. Tell us what you did on
So
that
you
year
mean
out.
my 1 year in Central America?
Yes.
Yeah. So, it was a great year. So I spent about a year and 2 months out in total, like, in terms of CV time. That was what I spent out. So I spent my first 6 months at the Harpswell Foundation. So there's a Cambodian foundation founded by an MIT professor. He kind of set up dorms for very promising, academically promising Cambodian girls. They were typically from the rice fields, from very disadvantaged backgrounds. And this foundation exists to remove the barriers to higher education. So a lot of people think Cambodian women are poor, or they're the financial reasons, but actually that's not true. A lot of tuition fees is very much affordable, but it's the cultural obstacles where the parents don't think that you should be educated. And there aren't any student dorms. So you and I both stayed in a student dorm at some point, I assume. They don't have that. They just have a school, and then you figure out how you want to rent so you have to go into the big bad city, and these girls are from little towns, and they got to rent, and they can't afford to rent. So that really is the barrier. So I went into the Harpswell Foundation. I was teaching mentoring for 6 months. It was an amazing time, meeting these phenomenal women, inspiring women who also taught me lots in return. So I was then 6 months doing that. And then I went to Central America, did a bit of a intermediate Spanish. I already spoke a bit of Spanish, pushed myself out of my comfort zone, did a bit more Spanish. And then in between was figuring out how to pivot my career, So people in the jobs that I wanted were giving me names of people I could call. And I would call them and I would say, hey, I want your job. What do I need? And they were saying, like, you need Excel. Fine. And then I would go on Coursera and I would pay $50 US, whatever, and just do advanced Excel. And then next they said, oh, this guy says I need finance and accounting. So then I went on Coursera. I did finance and accounting. And I just did that slowly, whilst I was also kind of enjoying life and, enjoying Central America. Yeah, so by the time I was done, I kind of had a little bit more knowledge under my belt, plus a lot of fun traveling Central America, brand new skills, brand new language. And from the Harpswell Foundation just had like sisters. Like I don't have sisters. I don't have biological sisters, but I found like sisterhood. And I'm still very much in touch with everyone I taught and I volunteered with. So that's how I spent my 1 year. It was a very intentional year.
An awful lot more than just doing a couple of courses on Coursera then.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you said that,
Yes.
I was like, we have to come back here. Yeah, okay. Amazing.
Yes. So, I mean, there's just taking risks, right? And going out of my comfort zone and just giving myself the best chance for success, coming back into the real world. Yeah.
Which is timely. So tell us what success means to you.
I think there are two things. So if the first part of success means redefining yourself. So have you heard of this guy called John C. Maxwell? He wrote a lot of leadership books and a few self-help books. So John C. Maxwell, he calls it a SAP strata, SAPSTRATA. It is kind of self-imposed limitations that we give ourselves, that we think this is the best that we can do. So breaking through those self-imposed limitations is one side of success that I think is important for me. And two is doing it with some code of integrity and doing it with values that you are most aligned with, right? And in this first bucket, it could be objective success, like winning a prize or getting 100 points, like on your exam. But it doesn't need to be. So if I look at the cases of success for me, you can be a successful doctor, for example, can lead an amazing practice, be growing every year. But have you heard of these doctors with like malpractice suits? Like fertility doctors that inseminated like 49 women in Netherlands. So you can be successful, but not do it in a very honest way. Like, that's not success for me if you don't do it in the right way, because it's success at the expense of other people. That can't be success. And success in the first column, where you're passing through your SAP strata, where you're redefining yourself, there are different degrees to that, right? Like if, say, not everyone's a Nobel Prize winner, not everyone can be, but we also really have to honor where we began. So if we start from really humble beginnings, then humble successes are huge, right? But if you kind of had a very illustrious beginning, then building on that isn't a huge amount of growth either. So I think we really need to honor where we began and how much growth it took for us to redefine ourselves. So like a stay-at-home mom, for example, who's never worked in her life, reinventing herself, reskilling, and entering the workforce at like 45, I think is a huge, huge form of success. Because we really need to honor how far she's come. So yeah, it's those two things really for me.
I absolutely love that. I've never heard anyone describe both sides, and I completely agree. The importance of the moralistic side is often overlooked, but equally as important. But I have never heard anyone put it quite so beautifully. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. I mean, we see them all the time, Jess. Especially in this part of the world, people who benefited from nepotism, probably not really right for the job, can't really do the job that they've been asked to do, but have somehow gotten really far in life. And then here you are slogging away. and wondering like, well, what's the cheat code there? And and that's not to say, networking is not honest. Networking is a form of an honest way of getting ahead. But for some people, that is like 100% of how they navigate through lives. I think two things have to be there. It can't just be one thing.
Absolutely love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. We've been thinking about that one for a while. Has your definition of success changed?
The idea of success has changed incredibly for me. Again, I grew up in Singapore. Have you ever heard of the Singapore dream?
I haven't.
You haven't. Okay, well,
No.
so growing up, we were told that there are 5 C's, the letter C, to the Singapore dream. Okay, so the 5 C's, the Singapore dream is, let me see if I remember, cash, credit card, condominium, country club. What is the last one? And one more, but it is a sign of success. That's the Singapore dream, literally. You can ask Singaporeans my age, older, or slightly younger. That was the very first introduction of success to me. Wow, I know. And I know people, my peers, as of today, where that is their guiding light. Like that is their North Star. Like they feel like they haven't made it in society if they haven't gone on to collect these 5 C's. So that was the starting point, which you can imagine is extremely narrow of what success is. Cuts out a lot of the population
Hugely.
hugely, is material success and a huge form of social status. So that was my starting point, Jess.
Wow. I mean, how you got from that to the beautiful pillars? How?
I mean, something sounded really wrong to me, like listening
Even
to
as a
these 5
child?
C's. Even as a child, I was like, no
Yeah.
way, this is it. I mean, it helped that I had a bit of a religious background, where
Mhm.
where I went to church and Jesus was with prostitutes. He hung out with the poorest of the poor and the sick. That balanced my little brain a little bit growing up. So it's just like, okay, I need to take a step back and I need to reevaluate what success is. But yeah, and then looking at the people who had these things and just asking myself, like, are these people really successful to me? Was there any cost of them achieving this success? Did I like them as people? Like, and that's how I began just reevaluating success. And when I went to the UK, and I told you kind of a lot of things changed for me, I kind of reevaluated things. I have to give the UK a lot of credit here because I think British society values very much skills, knowledge. The area which I was, and I'm sure Singaporeans will hate me by now, but it's I'm like dissing their country. But it was a very much more balanced side of success. Even as students in Asia, we were memorizing things, and it was more critical thinking here versus memorizing. It was more leadership positions and external kind of classes that gave you value as opposed to like just pure grades. People would see people with just good grades and nothing else as a little bit unbalanced. So I think that kind of gave me a lot more perspective studying in the UK and then being in the working world and seeing like, hey, how about people who never went to university? Like, why am I so impressed by some of these people, and they present so confidently. Some of them do really well financially, and you're like, hey, like what makes them different? And then you ask yourself, where did these people come from? Like, what do they have? And I think those things that I mentioned were really constant in the people that I met that didn't quite fit the formula of like going to good school and getting good grades and doing all those things. So yeah, so those that was kind of my journey towards really re-understanding what success is for me. So yeah, a huge shift from the 5 C's to what it is today. Yeah.
Wow. And also to be open-minded enough to, let that new definition in, because I think, I don't know if you've read any Carol Dweck, the sort of the fixed mindset, growth mindset thing, and to be willing to go, okay, so like I was brought up and this is what I was told, and this is who all the people who were my people until I was, let's say, 18 when you left to go to university. And I assume that you said there, like some of your peers, maybe even some of your friends still believe that. And to let the new knowledge in, is that just who you are? Like you
Jarring.
are very open-minded, or, how did that sort of come about?
That was jarring for me, Jess, to say anything else. Now I'm older. I'm used to it, but I remember growing up and feeling so different.
Wow.
I'll give you an example. One thing I picked up really quickly is backpacking. From the UK, backpacking. Now, have you noticed the Asian students don't backpack? Like they're not the solo travelers. You think about that. Like as in the Asian students that came from Asia, not the British Asians, like the ones that, flew from very far away. Do you remember them ever backpacking alone? No. Think
No.
about it. So I picked that up really quickly. I really enjoyed it. And I remember asking my brother for a lift to the airport. So I had my huge backpack. I had a full itinerary to Vietnam planned.
Amazing.
And my brother drove me to the airport and he's like, "So where are you going?" And I'm like, "To Vietnam." And he's like, "With whom?" And I'm like, "No one." And he's like, "But why?" And he just like solo backpacking, solo traveling just was like, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? That's so weird. But then having to sit in the car and then explaining to my brother that it's really okay to go yourself and you can meet friends, you can learn things, you can really enjoy solo traveling. But to him, that was such a strange thing. He was like, "You never go alone." But it's this conditioning, right? That you were mentioning, where your people are telling you that like this is it, and you're the little odd one out who's like, "No, I want to be different," and then feeling like you gotta explain yourself a lot, like just
Yeah.
and like there's nothing easy about that. Doesn't get It gets easier after after people leave you alone because they know you're just like the oddball, but like oh, there she goes again, her other solo trip. But yeah, I mean, then it's a muscle, right? Like being different. Then you just keep doing it, and then you're just like, right, I'll just keep being different, and then over time, you get so used to explaining how different you are that it doesn't feel odd anymore. And like over time, hopefully, like people respect that, But starting out, it's never easy to explain like why the hell are you doing something which no one else ever does. But I don't know. Like what do you think? What's your
I really love the muscle of being different. I completely agree with you. There is something in just like the first time you do something that's like different to the norm, it feels shocking for everyone around you, and you almost have to let them go through the change curve to see you in a different
Absolutely.
light. It's sort of they still have to go through the change curve, I think, for the next few times, and you're like, "Oh no, I'm going to do this other thing that seems insane to you." it kind of, I know you've talked a lot about values as we've been talking, and I think often when you do choose a different path, you challenge people's values, and they sort of are then almost questioning themselves, obviously not outwardly, but whether or not, at least this is what I tell myself, I don't know if this is correct, but whether or not they have made the right decisions. And I think often when I get a really big reaction to something that I've done, that
Mm-hmm.
someone's like, why have you done like that? And this hasn't happened in years, but it's almost like, I remember when we first spoke, I said, like, when I originally mooted the idea of taking a sabbatical to my boss at the time, and he was like,
Yeah.
don't do that, that's a terrible idea, you know, you'll destroy your career, da 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 da. And this was long before where I am now. And I was like, oh, okay, like I shouldn't do that then. And actually I think it's probably
Yeah.
just that he either wasn't brave enough, or he never got the opportunity to take a sabbatical. So it was never something that was on his radar. And I think it's
Absolutely.
almost like you have to kind of you've said it, like keep using that muscle, keep expanding. And then eventually the people who are going to accept you are just going to be like, okay, well, that's just who she is. Or they're going to go and you'll be like, okay, well, you weren't helpful to me anyway. So actually you not being in my immediate stratosphere is good for me.
Yeah. And, taking a sabbatical is the most un-Asian thing that I've done. Uh, oh my gosh, and explaining that to my grandmother was just like, what? You're not gonna work for a year? You're not gonna earn money for a year? But yeah, I mean, what are the options? Never doing what you want to do and then resenting yourself after? Like, somehow that's worse for me than, explaining myself to people who might not appreciate what I have to say, who might not have the same kind of worldview. I prefer that than going home at night and there's just feeling like I'm just muting myself. I'm just suppressing what I feel and what I think. Like somehow that feels worse. So yeah.
Yeah, it's much easier. It's actually not easier, but it's much better to disappoint other people than to disappoint yourself. But often that is not the easy route.
It is not. And I talk about the 5 C's, which is how the community defined success for me. What we haven't really double clicked on is the female side of things. The kind of what success is for a female is a whole other thing, right? So we're told by and so I have to deal with the 5 C's, okay? That's like baseline. And then I get pulled aside by like my grandmother and my mother, and I'm told then privately, when my brother's not part of this conversation, privately that I need to get married, and they've decided to whom it is, like, has to be from church, older than you. Ideally, you meet him in university. You have kids by 30. Like, there's this implicit or explicit or kind of framing of what I then need to be as a
Yeah.
woman to be successful. And I hated that. Just
Yeah.
I I didn't realize I carried so much baggage, like from my grandmother and like my ancestors, out of like who I needed to be and like what a woman was, and like the shedding of that was really the most liberating thing that I've ever felt, because I don't want to be defined by my relationship status. I don't want to be defined by what my reproductive organs can do. I want to be defined by my external looks. Like especially Asian women, like, the pale and fair, and they go for skin lightening. Like they sell a lot of products to lighten your skin. You can be pale and fair skinned, long, beautiful hair, and slim figure, and like all these things. And even if they're not told to you specifically, they're told to you implicitly, because you come home from university and the first thing my grandmother says is like, A, you've put on weight, and B, have you found a boyfriend yet? So implicitly you pick up what their expectations are. Um,
Yeah.
and we are as women so much more than that. I am so much more than what my uterus can do. Like, I am in a boardroom every day. I am creating value to organizations every day. Stop looking at my uterus and like what my
Yeah.
uterus produced, because I am a lot more than that. But again, that's something. Oh, even today, like every day, I think we're really fighting against. I can come from a more Asian perspective where I think we're behind the Europeans a little bit, but that's success as a woman. All the
Mm.
things that are out of control are pillars of success, and that's nonsense. That is crazy.
I completely agree. I haven't lived in Asia for a long time, so it's difficult for me to say whether or not we're ahead, but I don't necessarily think we are in Europe. I think almost it's more insidious here, like whereas it might be more
Okay.
explicit in Asia. I think there is definitely still, like, I'm in my mid-30s, most of my friends are having babies, that there is like, a definite sort of like, and great for them, I'm really happy for them, but I think there is this sort of expectation that you should be having kids, and there's the whole is it like if you're not had kids by 35, then you've left it too late, and all of this stuff. And I don't think any of that is, well, I don't know, like I don't know the science behind it, but is that scientifically correct? Probably not, but it's almost just like there's constant like barriers. And I think we are seeing things changing. We are seeing maternity leaves improving. We're also seeing partner leave improving, which is really, really important. And there's some amazing people and movements who are doing great things to try and bring the parity of experience up. But I think we still have an awful long way to go, particularly when we look at the gender pay gap, because, it's still a problem. And, until we start acknowledging that one partner has to take a step back from their
Yeah.
career to have children, like this whole notion of like, you can have it all, you cannot have it all. And, stop telling women that they should want it all and they failed if they haven't got it all, whatever it all is, which we normally assume means like, being some sort of executive and having 2.4 kids and a Volvo and a house and also being thin, and it's
Yes.
exhausting.
And it's not just us, it's the men too. The men who
Yeah.
want to be helpful, our allies. There was this program in Singapore that followed this stay-at-home dad in Singapore. And he said that the older ladies in his apartment block would come down and ask him what business he had being in the playground with kids at 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. on a Wednesday. Like, shouldn't his wife be there? Like, why is it him? And it was his wife was working, obviously, and he was a stay-at-home dad, but like they couldn't understand it. And they made him feel really bad. And amongst their peers, they also, not every guy is gonna say like, "Oh, well done! Like you're staying home and your
Yeah.
your wife is at work and you're the one slacking at home and you're not being a man." They get it too. So it's really folding in everyone into this conversation that what are gender norms and what are the structural insidious things, like you're saying, that are enforcing these gender norms, and how can we kind of tackle that together? And there are guys who want to be part of the feminist movement, and they want their wives to have the primary career, not the secondary one, in the house. How do we help them as well? So there's this conditioning both sides of the
Mm.
men and women. So yeah, everyone's telling us, Jess, like what it is to be successful and what it is to be normal and what it is to be valuable. And I think we really need to reevaluate why we're told what we're told. And it's amazing that you're you're having this podcast that kind of challenges a lot of toxic conditioning that all of us have gone through, and just really taking a step back and just relooking everything we've been told and just saying, like, why? What is that creating for us? What has to change?
So true. And you're right. Like it's every gender. No one's, having the best time. So like it does feel like a real, or rather we're on the cusp of revolution with the right people who are willing to carry that torch. There's still a lot of
Yeah.
resistance out there. We've got some people in power who don't want that to change across the world. But
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, but that's why just kind of your podcast and just adding a few more voices to shed a light to this and discuss this a bit more openly. I think we just need more of these things. Because, yeah, I think it would do us a lot of good if we evolved in the right way, in the right direction. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you.
completely agree. Thanks for being here. Thanks for having the conversation with me. Now, I think we've touched on a lot of these, but are there any other barriers that you've had to overcome to get to where you are now?
I think the biggest barrier was just toxic conditioning, toxic programming.
Yeah.
Yes, I think we all. I'm very grateful. I grew up with wanting nothing, had enough food on the table. I didn't grow up in a war-torn country. I had everything that I wanted. I went on vacations, so I had all kind of the materialistic comforts. Growing up. So I think for me it was a lot of conditioning that I had to overcome. If I had to bring up one or two examples, especially from an Asian point of view, I think was the very first one where I had a brother and I was made to feel like boys were more valuable than girls. So huge in kind of Asian culture that boys are somehow more esteemed, more valued as human beings. I have no clue why. And the most annoying thing is that the people that enforce things like this, or that kind of reinforce it, are the women, Jess.
Yeah.
Are the women. The women do it to the women. So
Yes.
my brother, my father, never told me who I was or what I wanted to be. I had full control. They're like, you be you, we support you, you do anything. It was the women who showed favoritism, who not gave me demerit points for like being different, or showed, bias.
Mm-hmm.
So number one thing to overcome was this kind of favoritism or bias, or whatever you call it, towards guys. The first thing. And then, oh gosh, I think are just Asian values that are very narrow, that are grades, money, and if you strayed outside that mold, somehow you weren't doing the right thing, and just breaking away from some toxic conditioning, I think, were the biggest barriers. And that's books, and that's exposure, and that's therapy, and that's like so many things. But yeah, but it's just all up here for us, isn't it? Yeah.
And it's that whole sameness, right? And the willing to be the odd one out and say, I don't believe that. And that's a big weight to carry, especially as a young person. And so to have the conviction to sort of keep carrying those beliefs, because it's exhausting, is incredibly admirable.
Yeah, and I think we should all strive to be the most authentic selves, like our own selves, and that involves listening to who you are and just acting on that. And like I told you, Jess, like growing up, I was told to suppress all of that. So it's just learning to like re-listen to myself and like understand what my body is telling me, and like these itches that I told you. I think we spoke about this before. Like our bodies are much wiser than our brains. So somehow we kind of have all the answers that we need in our own bodies. We just kind of need to tune out the noise and just listen to that. And somehow listening to myself was a challenge growing up. So re-listening to my body and what hurts and what is enjoyable is somehow a brand new set of skills that I'm also just trying to pick up.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Tell me what advice you'd give to your younger self.
Oh, I think I'd say two things. One, like really listen to yourself, tune out the noise, listen to every pain, every bit of joy, everything your body, your intuition is trying to tell you. Like pay attention to that. Like your body isn't going to give you answers, but like respecting what you hear is like step number one. And then like what you do after is really up to you. But like number one is just really listen to yourself. And then number two is to like always do hard things. Yeah, just I think comfort and breeds complacency, and stepping out of your comfort zone is like I think the biggest driver of success. Yeah, do hard things all the time. I wish I did more harder things, but
I mean, it sounds like you've done quite a few. I think, you're up there with the hard things tally.
yeah, do more hard things. I think the scariest something feels, I need to learn to not run away when I feel that I should try and
Oh, that's really
face.
got me. Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What got you?
Just
The
the
running away
like,
from
the
fear thing?
not running away from the scary thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
That was
just letting all
that
that
was that
land.
was
I'm just gonna,
that was
um, what permission do you want to
oh
give
yeah.
others through your story?
People to think that they don't need permission to do anything.
I love that.
Yeah, that I think most of my mistakes were because I thought I needed someone's permission. Somehow I need someone's permission to be like in my mid 30s and single. Like somehow I need my grandmother's permission to be like this badass woman, who doesn't fit her mold. Like, why? I don't
I love
need
that
anyone's
so much.
permission to do anything. So I would say you don't need my permission for anything. No one needs anyone else's permission. And that if you feel like you need permission to do something, then have a think why. Go back a little bit and just, if you want to live life according to your terms and you feel like you can't, then just ask yourself whose voice it is in your head that's telling you, like, don't do it. But yeah, I don't think you need permission to. It's your life. It's your life. It's your time. It's your money. I mean, look, if you're 10 years old, then 100% you need permission. As you get older, if you need to borrow someone's lawnmower, you need their permission. But like
Yeah.
apart from that, like just like,
Love that.
making your own choices, I don't think we need anyone's permission to do anything. I think we need people's input for
Mm-hmm.
sure. I think we need advice or suggestions, but I don't think we need any permission.
Clara, are you ready for quick fire?
I am. Steel myself. Do some stretching.
Okay.
Yes.
Ready.
I am.
One word to describe your current relationship with success.
Oh, I'm gonna be ballsy. I'm gonna say it's inevitable. Success is inevitable for anyone. If we define success as growth, then spoiler alert, I think just hard work will get us there.
Love that so much. Your non-negotiable boundary that protects you from burnout.
Timely rest.
Mm.
And
Okay.
that's defined loosely, right? But rest at appropriate times. Yeah.
Well, helpfully, the next question is, what does rest look like for you?
I think it's a really unstructured period of time where you have no alarms, you have no plans, your phone is off, your curtains are drawn. And, when people ask you what you're going to have, what you're going to do, you can just say, I don't know. And that's okay. For like hours, I don't know. That's rest. Solitude. Yeah.
Amazing. One thing you wish more people knew about building a sustainable career?
This is a big one. I think that is directly proportionate to how much growth and how much knowledge you gain, and how often you're out of your comfort zone. So the more complacent you are, you're not really learning. And
true.
the more out of your comfort zone, the more skills and value you can gain, the further your career runway is, I think. No pain, no gain.
Love it. The success metric that matters to you most right now?
How often I'm out of my comfort zone, or how often I face my fears. Yeah.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah. So if I'm not facing little fear gremlin like every day, a fear gremlin can just be like doing lunges, by the way. It's nothing big. It's not like solving cancer. But a fear gremlin is just doing something you just don't like to do, like practicing a language or something. But yeah, the more fears I face, I think the more successful I am, regardless of whether I succeed.
I love it. And finally, what makes you feel most successful as fuck?
Oh, well, if I'm able to do something useful and give back to add value to society, it doesn't matter in what capacity, as a caregiver or in the boardroom, doesn't really matter, it's not prescribed, I'd feel successful.
I love it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Gosh, that was a nice,
a great conversation.
it really was.
We have had a lovely time. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for listening today, and a huge thank you to Clara for such an honest and powerful conversation. Clara's journey from the Singapore Dream's 5 C's to her own definition of success, breaking through self-imposed limitations with integrity, really struck me. That reframing of success to honour where you began and how much growth it took to get to where you are is something we all need to hear. I loved Clara's perspective on not needing anyone's permission. As she said, if you're 10 years old, yes, you need permission. If you need to borrow someone's lawnmower, you need permission. But apart from that, your life, your time, your choices. The question isn't whether you have permission, it's whose voice it is in your head telling you that you can't. Clara's advice to do hard things, to face your fear gremlins daily, and to run towards the scary things rather than away from them is the kind of wisdom that changes lives. And her reminder that our bodies are wiser than our brains, that we need to relearn how to listen to ourselves after years of being taught to suppress every feeling, that landed hard. The biggest takeaway for me is that success isn't about fitting into someone else's mold, whether that's the 5 C's or your grandmother's expectation about marriage and children, or society's narrow definition of what being a successful woman looks like. It's about growth, integrity, and the courage to be your authentic self, even when that makes you the odd one out. If this week's episode of Successful AF has resonated with you, I want to hear about it. Drop me a line at successfulafpod@gmail.com. I'm always looking for inspirational people to join me on the pod, so if you know someone who you think would be great, nominate them or yourself at successfulafpod@gmail.com. Also, please do like and subscribe. It really helps, and I truly appreciate you being here. See you next time.